Good evening, everybody, and thank you all for joining me this evening. What is it? September 14th, 2020. This is my first show in about a month and a half or so. We took a little liaisons or a holiday. I guess that's what the British would call it. But I took a little time off and recouped, and now we're beginning our fall schedule. And tonight, I am so excited to have with me my good friend all the way from Jackson. Well, not Jackson anymore. Still Jackson? Yeah. My good friend, because he's originally from Louisiana, and so I often get that confused. But I know that the Lord moved him, and he's there in the epicenter. But just want to greet everybody tonight. Thank you all for joining me. This is the Unpacking Show, where we unpack thoughts, ideas, concept, perspectives, and anything really that kind of intrigues my mind and those people around me. To be able to converse with people that have kind of like a tap into whatever the thought may be or whatever the perspective may be, so that they can bring some of their own perspective and unpack certain questions that I may have in my mind. And I'm going to bring with me right now my good friend, the Bishop, the one and only Lionel J. Traylor. Thank you, sir, for joining me tonight. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing awesome, Pastor. How are you? I'm honored to be here. Honored to be here, Pastor Jones.
I am honored to have you here with me. That you are my first guest in this fall schedule. We're going to chat a little bit just to give people a chance to log on and maybe share. But how's everything with you? What you been doing different or the same?
Oh, I'm rebelling against the quarantine. I've been enjoying life, man, enjoying my family, enjoying my beautiful children and grands. Now ministry, just keeping the ministry going, continuing to do what God has called us and commissioned us to do, saving of souls, keeping my ear to what's happening in the city, what's happening in the church, and our responsibility in that field, in our calling. And so been busy. I mean, considering all that's going on in 2020, it's been, both a place of peace and prosperity, but also really staying busy.
Yeah, it's crazy what's been happening in this 2020 with just not just the pandemic, but everything else in the middle. But for those that may not know who you are, can you kind of let them know your ministry, what you're doing? I know you've written a book, 2 books. Is that right? Or you're in the process of writing your second book? No, you already published it.
Right, two published in the last 2 years. I don't want to be a book mill and just put out books just for the sake of putting out books. But we want to write and release as the Lord, gives us fresh download. We want to really release things that are, I think, is seasonal and not just for the sake of writing books. So about 2 years ago, I wrote a book entitled When Lions Talk, and then we Understanding the Language of Kings. And then we did a workbook there. It was more written from a male's perspective about the language that men typically speak, and the language that's more, I have to just say, the language of a king, and especially kingdom men, God-centered, God-fearing men. And then wrote that workbook to companion with that book. And then we wrote in the season of spiritual warfare. God gave me some keys on spiritual warfare, and I wrote a book entitled Releasing the Drums of War. The Drums of War. And that is literally talking about strategies and tactics on spiritual warfare. So I came out of a season of spiritual warfare, and then in an experience, we documented it, preached on it, and then put it in a book. And so I'll be working on the 3rd book toward the end of this year. And having it ready for 2021. And
That's
so
fit.
I pastor the Epicenter Church here in Jackson, Mississippi. 1 church, 2 locations. We have our headquarters church. It's in South Jackson. And then we have our training center here in West Jackson, Mississippi. So, and then we just celebrated 10 years of the Epicenter Church in June, in the midst of the quarantine. So we hadn't had to have a great celebration yet. But nevertheless, God has given us 10 years of pastoring, and I have 22 years of ministry. 22 years of ministry total.
Fantastic. And I know you are connected with the leaders of your city,
Yes, sir.
uh, in conversation with them about what's going on now. I know there's a lot to talk about since the last time we spoke. I think that was in July. I think, if I can
Yes.
remember correctly, we were talking about some civil unrest due to the injustice that's been happening to the black community, and we were hoping at that junction that it'd be the last time we discussed, inequality and civil unrest and police brutality and all these things. But it seems like this is an MO for our country, if not for our community. What were you thinking when these things are happening, especially as a person of color, as a black a man, not only a black man in America, but as a leader in the black community? What are your thoughts when these things, like the shooting that happened with Jacob Blake over at Kenosha, Wisconsin? With the man that was unarmed, and was shot 7 times in the back, and having the death of George Floyd, just not even but just few months before then.
Before that,
What was the process of your thinking, and
wow.
what was your spirit? What was happening?
Wow. So first of all, the black experience is so just like every other American experience is different. The black experience in America is so vast, and I don't want to say that I speak for all of Black America. I can't speak for my own experiences, my own perspective, a generalization of where I come from in New Orleans, Louisiana. And I think if I think most Black people in America can have one general consensus is that these things are nothing new.
Yeah.
Just honestly, that this is nothing new. As a young man, I think the last time we spoke, my when these things happen, my first mind goes back to the beating of Rodney King.
Yeah,
So
I remember that.
this is how often, every now and then we get this. And I think, again, because of the times we live in where it's easy to film it, you don't have to wait on the news to get to it. You don't have to wait on the reporter. Every person is eyewitness news when they pull out their phone, they pull out their camera, and they're able to live stream, upload instantly. And now everybody else is trying to play catch up. I'm talking about as far as government officials, community, and everyone else is playing catch up because at that moment, it's live. Whether all the details are completely reported, the incident itself goes live. And when the incident goes live, everybody from that point draws their own perspective until all the other information comes out. So, like I said, I have a perspective as a Black man in America, as a Christian man, husband, father, and a community leader. So you want to be wise, and you want to be. I want to be careful because these things have been so divisive. Oftentimes, we don't take time to hear the different perspectives. We don't care to hear the different perspectives, especially when a community has experienced so much pain for so long. You understand it. I think the last time we spoke, I told you Dr. King is quoted as saying, "Riots are the voice of the
The
unheard,
unheard.
the
Yeah.
voice of the oppressed."
Yeah.
And so that's how the protests initially started. We go back when our last conversation was dealing with the shooting death of Ahmaud Arbery.
Right.
Since then, we've had Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Jacob Blake, and other incidences
Yeah.
that are not garnering so much national attention. Although, and then of course you have the politicizing of it.
Well,
You have,
I wanted to
yeah,
connect with that because I know that these are the political side of it is
right.
really causing a divide. And for me, I understand. I believe I'm not a black man in America, obviously, and it though I feel like I have a connection to the struggle I will never struggle. I always consider it when I think about it. I always think no matter whatever racism I may face, the kind of weight that the black community carries in America when it comes to injustice, I will never experience. You know, and so the politicizing of it is really kind of like causing this kind of divide that we feel right now, which I think you mentioned. I wanted to kind of like, if you can unpack that a little bit, as you're beginning to go ahead, Pastor.
Right. So, and I think the media plays its part. It always has, because the media is into shock. It's into controversy, because controversy creates cash. Controversy sells, and it doesn't. It's not really. It really doesn't matter that it's splitting the country, it's splitting our community, helping us to wage wars against us. There's already war. There's already war. There's already mindsets that are evil. Let's just be honest about that. And that can be on any side. When sides are drawn, everybody doesn't come to the table with the right mindset. Everybody's not coming to the table for righteousness or what justice is. So I do believe that we're being played politically. I do believe the media has spent this into what they want to spend it. And that's why we as men and women of God, or people who really believe in righteousness, we ought to be looking for justice, not necessarily vengeance.
Mm.
And our heart should still be to find peace and prosperity in a way where it's right for all parties, for all people. And that's my perspective. That's my heart.
I want you, if you can, I want to go to what you just said right now. The difference between justice versus vengeance. Because when I hear and I read and I converse with people about the injustice happening in the black community, there seem to be a lot of people that are kind of like, uh, you know, let's talk, for instance, about the Black Lives Matter movement versus the Black Lives Matter organization. And a lot of
Right,
people are looking at this, and they want to put a separation between the two, because one is seeking for justice, and some people
right,
think, well, the other is just seeking for revenge or
right,
vengeance. Can you
right.
unpack that for us a little bit in your perspective, obviously, and like you said, you're not speaking for everybody else, but for what we're doing right now, and for who you are representing yourself. Can you speak a little bit about that?
I think if we let emotions lead us and pain leads us, any of us, our justice will be blinded by our pain. And vengeance is ultimately all that sometimes we can get out if we're led by pain and led by emotion. Um, my history growing back up in New Orleans, Louisiana, I've experienced some things in the hands of my community. Friends shot, left for dead, killed, and if I would have reacted out of the spirit of vengeance or the heart of vengeance, not only would other lives have been lost, I would have probably lost my own life eventually, or been locked up in prison for a long time. So, cooler heads have to prevail, and hearts have to be tempered, and
Mm,
grace is needed.
mm, yeah.
Uh, and I think you can still look for justice and get a healing for those pains. But if those pains lead us and vengeance leads us, destruction is, because after wrath is finished with the enemies, then wrath then consumes the host. And
So
I,
so
I
let me.
can't let I can't let pain and anger lead me, because then pain and anger consumes me.
Yeah.
I do believe that there's a difference between the black the I do believe there's a difference between the fact that black lives matter
Correct.
or must matter in our country. And I do know folks gonna say, Bishop Traylor, all lives matter. I agree, all lives matter. But all communities are not having to experience the same thing.
Yeah.
So if one house is on fire, and this is the most simple analogy I've heard, if we all live in the same community, but my house is on fire, You don't, and I'm running through the community saying, help me, my house is on fire. No way my community should begin to yell back at me, all houses matter. You know, all houses matter. Yes, all houses matter, but all houses are not on fire. At this moment, my house is on fire. And I need you to help me to address the issues, to put the fires out in my house if we are a community, like we say we are.
Let me ask in that same light, like, when you say vengeance versus justice, and I believe that, I do hope that the church and every single person in our community desires for justice, no matter, no matter the color. You know what I mean?
Right,
Just pure
right,
justice.
right.
But in light of the black struggle, when it comes to justice in America, and the Black Lives Matter statement and fact versus the Black Lives Matter organization and movement, there's a lot of people that are kind of trying to put a divide between there, because there is a desire for justice and
Mhm.
for righteousness and equity, for our black brothers and sisters. But a lot of people feel like, and if you can unpack this a little bit, a lot of people feel like the vengeance part of it, the rioting, the burning of the cities and things of that nature, is an act of something else.
Well,
It's not an act of justice; it's an act of riotous
it's an
vengeance.
act of vengeance. Now, in the mind of some, it's an act of righteous indignation. In the minds of some, I don't necessarily uh, agree with the burning of cities, and I don't agree with that. I don't think it's going to be fruitful for any of us. However, though I don't condone the wrong, I understand uh, the pain of those that may be responding out of pain. However, I also know that there's people that's down there that's being paid to manipulate this situation, also to use the pain of the community as an excuse for a whole nother agenda. Because the reality is, most of the burning and the protest that's going on in communities of color across this country are not being done by people of color or people of those communities. This is a known fact that we have paid groups, Antifa and other groups coming in that's manipulating this situation for another agenda. Now, that's just a fact. We've seen images coming out of different cities, especially in Chicago, where Chicago activists and even some gang members stopped looting and protesters by telling them, if you're not from Inglewood, you need to leave Inglewood
Yeah,
because we're not going to. And that was done by community leaders. That's the thing that's not being shown in the media. And the reason is because the media has an agenda. They consistently say this is by Black Lives Matter, which makes most people believe it is Black people or Black people in
yeah,
the community.
right.
What are they going to get out of burning their own community? Reality is Black people are not burning their own communities. These are paid and hired arsonists, protesters. Even take the young man who, no matter what side of the coin of you are on, the young man who shot the two or three protesters.
Yeah,
I'm forgetting his name right now. Well, he's the reality. All three of those protesters were European or Caucasian. They were white. They were the ones out burning and looting and even attacked him while he was in the city armed to protect uh, property. So these are the people who are doing the looting and the burning of Black communities that's already suffering in whatever different reasons they are suffering. So this is a lot. There's a lot going on there, but there is a difference between Black Lives Matter and the Black Lives Matter organization propaganda movement. There's a difference. There's a difference. Black Lives has been mattering. Black
man.
people have been protesting. Uh, this is not. We didn't need BLM per se to
Hmm.
spark the movement.
Yeah,
Now, however, they did spark something, but what they have sparked has become, to me personally, a fire that's burning out of control, where I don't see the way that they're doing it can be as successful. Let me say this too, also, Pastor.
yes, sir.
Let's just be honest. In the minds of some Americans, There is no right way to protest.
Mm.
Whether it's burning down buildings or whether it's taking a knee, doing doing the national anthem, or standing in unity before the national anthem, which recently NFL players was booed for doing that. So
I'm like so intrigued, right? Because like what
right,
you're saying, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'm so intrigued by that. Like people are saying, stop looting, stop rioting, stop all of this stuff, do it peacefully. And then when people are doing it peacefully, they're saying, we don't want it in our sports, we don't want it there. Where do I'm yelling and I'm peaking on my
there,
audio.
there, there is no
There's like
free.
there is. You're right, man. You're right, Elder. There is no right way for people. Yeah, there is no right way for people to protest because in the minds, the people that are doing it are the wrong type of
Let me
people.
put it this way, Pastor, and I'm not a divisive person. I'm very not. I'm just a plain realistic person, and you can't solve issues by denying the issues. You'll never change what
Say
you will
that
not
again, sir.
confront. Yeah, you can't solve issues by denying the issues. You'll never change what you're not willing to confront.
Mm.
There is a proper way to protest in this country, but there's not a proper way to protest in this country if you're people of color. That's the reality.
Say that
And
for the
that's
people in the back.
there's a proper way to protest in the country, but there's not a proper way to protest in the country for people of color. Whether it was sit-ins, whether it was marching with locked arms, Dr. King and John Lewis still beating bloody on the bridge, freedom bus rides that were bombed, church bombings. We know our history in this country.
Yeah.
Being beaten for voting because you feel like, okay, maybe if we vote and find a way to do it legally, but you're discouraged from voting, you were beat from voting. Now, protesting in sports isn't anything new. Protesting in sports goes back as far as you can say Arthur Ashe, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Right.
This isn't anything new. But the reality is the problem is still the same. America has a problem that she's not willing to address. And if some don't believe it, I'm not saying we haven't made great strides. Because anytime you want to address any problem, even if you're trying to talk in the marriage and you want to address problems in your marriage, the worst thing you can do is start talking about everything that the spouse did wrong and don't acknowledge the things she or he has done right. If every time we have a conversation, all we want to do is talk about the problems, then we begin to bring up resentment. I think we do need to acknowledge that Black people have been able to make great strides in America over the last 100 years, especially over the last 50, 60 years. We've been able to make great strides. We have Black billionaires in this country. We own land, we own property. We're more educated, and things of that nature. However, we have to also still acknowledge that it's taken us a very long time to get here, and we had to do this where there were laws in place that systemically still held back Black people in this country. Redlining, housing discrimination, all those things are still very real, Pastor. Those things are still very real. The Clinton crime bill, and I'm not for one side or the other, it's just what it is. Mass incarceration, the war on drugs of the 80s and the 90s. And then we deal with that system of drugs now differently, now that it's affecting our white brothers and sisters. And so those are systemic things that are realistic. Are white people being killed by police officers in America? Unarmed white people are being killed by police officers in America? Yes. Are they being killed at a more alarming percentage than Black people in America, who's a minority in America? No. When white people are killed by police officers, especially unarmed white people, do it make the evening news? No, it doesn't. So this country would not even know if this is happening. Does everything that goes on wrong in the Black community and brown community make the news? We headline the news. Everything that goes wrong in the Black community is entertainment for the rest of America.
Well, if yeah, go ahead. Finish your thought. Sorry.
So that also perpetuates the problem that black men, especially black men in our society, is consistently shown in a perpetual negative light. And we have to work twice as hard in this country to be seen in a redeemable light. And a
Mm.
lot of that does have to do with media, propaganda, and all those things.
Well, that's what I was actually going to interject. How big do you think? Because we're obviously media is major now, especially we have it under our fingertips, and the news now is the money behind news making is making the mainstream media really sway, I believe, to what produces more views, which in turn produces more money for them. And so, how large do you think? I mean, I guess it'd be unfair to ask you if you could even unpack a little bit on what's the percentage you think that the media is playing into what we're seeing and what we're feeling and what is in the social environment of our nation. But if you can maybe share your thoughts on what the play of the media is in regards to what's happening now in our country.
Um, all you have to do is look at social media and how algorithms decide what is shown more repetitively and what is not shown. Uh, uh, Watch the media and see how the media is now swayed to um, produce movies that are more widely accepted than maybe 20, 30 years ago in this country would have probably been censorship.
Mm-hmm.
You can watch now that the way media does not report the news, but you have people who sit there and dictate the news based off their opinions. I've never seen a day, and I don't care what side of the line you are on politically, religiously, ethnicity, economics, we all have to acknowledge. Uh, there was a time where a news anchor would just report the news. Now, news anchors report their feelings in an adjunction to every story. They can be very, no matter what side of the line you're on, no matter how, I've never seen a day where news reporters talk to politicians, physicians, doctors, other people that are masters in their class with disrespectful tones on anything they disagree on. And so now our
Everybody's an expert now.
Everybody's an expert. Now media pundits are helping to shape culture, helping to shape group thinking. And so we're being programmed. It's amazing how folk would shut the voice of the preacher and shut the preacher down and tell you to shut down the preacher. But then we sit in front of our whatever your news is religiously. And we just take in whatever our favorite reporter is saying, our favorite anchor man or anchor woman is saying without ever challenging them.
Yeah, and they seem to be like the voice of reason. Because obviously they're interviewing the politician, they're interviewing the doctor and things of that nature, and the doctor cannot have an argument with this person, and yet they're interjecting themselves as a expert in the field of whoever they're speaking to.
I heard this man has gone on now. His name was John H. Clark, John Henry Clark. Just read some things that he wrote in African studies and religion, things of that nature. But he has a quote that stuck to me. He said, "I only debate with my equals. Everyone else I teach." And it's amazing how our news reporters are debating with masters in their field based off their opinion. And they sway the people. They sway the people. I don't claim to know it all, but I do have a right to question everything. But just because I ask questions or have an opinion, still doesn't mean I'm right.
Yes. And it's interesting you were saying that, because here's a quote from Malcolm X. He said, "The media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent. That's power because they control the minds of the masses. Do you so let me ask you something. Do you feel
Very
like we are
truthful. Very
divided?
truthful.
Do
I
you
think
do you feel like we're as divided as the media makes it out to be?
I think the United States, earnestly, what we're seeing surfacing is things that were maybe not played out in the mainstream media all the time. You take, for instance, I'm gonna get in trouble for this. You take, for instance, the coronavirus
Oh,
pandemic.
we're going to another topic. Here we go.
Yeah, I do believe, and I think everyone knows that coronavirus is real. It's from a family of viruses. COVID-19 is a part of the family of viruses. However, I think even statistically, it would have to be considered a weak pandemic. We had more affected with the swine flu. We had just as many affected with H1N1, and that's reading the statistics. I'm not a professional. I'm just looking at their numbers. But I do believe if we reported on car accidents the way we report on COVID-19, no one would want to drive. If you knew earnestly, statistically, how many people die in car accidents in America annually, monthly. And if every time we had a car accident, you said in the latest news today, we had 5 car accidents just in the city of Jackson. We had 10 in the state of Mississippi. We had 100 in America just today, bringing that to with fatality of 78 people died in car accidents today. Statistically, if we project and we continue on this, you understand? We're like, I don't want to drive. I don't want to drive. Fear is a tool in the hand of the media, and fear is something that people use in order to control the masses. Fear and ignorance. Fear and ignorance. And a lot of time we are fearful of what we don't know. So now you're trusting the media to inform you in what you don't know. And if the media has a bias, then I can't trust them because they're going to spin it based on what continues to draw them ratings or what splits them on their side, whether it's liberal media or conservative media. That's where we are, my friend.
Yeah, I don't want to get into a place where we're kind of debating the virus itself, or
Right,
because this is not a debate. This show is not to debate. We're unpacking thoughts, ideas, concepts,
right,
and things
right,
of that nature, and
right.
really, um, definitely, I wasn't prepared to speak on differences of opinion when it comes to COVID-19 and how the how the government or the perception of the disease and exactly the percentages of death versus the percentages of those that may have died from certain other things. And I know there's a lot of conversation and then a lot of like conspiracy theory about it, but I do want to continue with the thought process of the media because I think a lot of what we're seeing right now, and if you think about it, we're on social media right now. This live
Right
stream is
now.
happening because of this platform called social media, Facebook. We are live on Facebook, and this will be posted on YouTube. And so a lot of the informations are happening within the scope of media. And
Right.
so I want to continue a little bit on the idea of where we at as a nation, our perception of maybe the virus, our perception of inequality, our perception of the division that is in our country, the racial division that may be there, even our perception of the president or the ones that are running against him. The media, I think, if you can kind of explore it a little bit, the shaping of the media for our minds and maybe even our hearts, how is it now affecting the way we as a church begin to connect with those inside our community,
Wow.
inside the faith community, and to those who are outside the faith community? Because
Pastor,
a lot of us are being driven by these media, and a lot of the folks that we believe are brethren are really kind of siding with one or another. What can you unpack on your own terms, Bishop, what you feel is happening that maybe the media is like a part of it, if not a major part of it, but a part of it, and it's infecting what we are doing as a church.
You used the word that I was going to use, and that's shaping our reality. The media is shaping our reality, and it is literally telling us you have to pick a side. You can't be, and I've heard it said you can't be neutral on a moving train. But I do think in certain perspectives, if you're going to pick a side, don't let the media decide what side is the proper side.
Mm.
And that's the reality. To me, it's like standing in a schoolyard, and you have two people in the schoolyard, and somebody said something, and they're about to have a fight. They're about to have a fight.
Right.
And one is going to fight the other because he believes he said something, and the other one is saying, I may not even have said it that way, but since you coming at me that way, yeah, what you going to make of it? But then there's always that third person that's there, and that third person that's pushing that fight is an instigator.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way this fight is going to stop, it won't be because of the instigator. The instigator wants to see the fight. The instigator loves to see the fight. And the instigator somehow becomes almost celebrity because he takes center stage by instigating the fight.
Right.
Like Don King. Don King makes money. Don King makes money by instigating the fight.
Right.
If you're going to stop the fight, you don't need an instigator, you need a mediator.
Say that one more time.
Yeah, if you're going to stop the fight, if you're going to stop the aggression, both sides are already mad, whatever their perspective is, because perception is reality in the mind of the one who's perceiving. It may not even be real, but it's my perception, so it becomes my reality.
Yeah.
And the instigator is propagating your perception, which may not even be reality. But he gets his rocks off by instigating wars between others.
So how should we deal with this?
We need more mediators, genuine mediators, than we do instigators. It's easy to start fires. It's hard to put them out. And we need people with wisdom that's going to be willing to put out those fires and sometimes be called whatever. Because if you stand on one side and you try and put out fire, let me just be honest. If I'm a black man and I want to put out a certain fire, certain group might call me a coon. If I'm a black man and I might want to put out a fire, somebody else may say that's weak. Mm-hmm. Those days are gone. And so to be a mediator takes more strength than it takes to be an instigator. I always ask people, when you go to war, if you're going to fight, ask yourself, are the rewards worth the war? If the rewards are not worth the war, you're really still losing. You're still losing. It's one thing to lose black men in the streets of America to blue on black crime.
Yeah.
It's another thing to lose entire communities or neighborhoods of black people because instigators fueled our anger to the point now we're not even protecting the entire neighborhood. So not only are you going to have to bury a black man, but now you're trying to figure out what we're going to do as an entire black community. Where are you going to shop? Where are we going to eat? Where our kids are going to go to school? Some of us are already walking through dilapidated conditions, abandoned homes, poor schooling. Then somebody gonna come and burn down what we do have. When you barely have anything.
Yeah.
And they're gonna say we're gonna burn it down in the name of George Floyd. Where's our wisdom in that? How about instead of burning down the community, we form a conglomerate and buy up everything that's abandoned? How about we sit at the table with the governors, with the mayors, and say, listen, we want better police training. We want to see a balance in ethnicity in policing. If there's going to be policing in the Black community, we need to see more Black police, more Black police chiefs, more Black, more, and let's also talk about psychological and sociological programs, burning down the community and creating greater division between police and Black communities is really not the answer. I'll be honest with you. There are those who will make money off of burning down Black communities and rebuilding them in other images.
Well, yeah, there's other entities who want to make Black Americans look, like the people that they're trying to shape, violent,
right,
disregarding their communities, and irreverent
Pastor Jones, watch this. It took this so-called resurgence of Black protesting
Mm-hmm.
To do certain things on television. And there's some TV shows that they're taking off that I'm like, okay, that we won't play Gone with the Wind anymore. Who cares about that?
Right, the cancel culture. Oh, that's another one, Bishop. That's another one. The cancel culture.
I mean, most Black people ain't watching Gone with the Wind anyway. If you want me to you got some white folk that don't even know what Gone with the Wind. There's a whole generation that's not watching Gone with the Wind.
Right. And now they put it up, and now everybody's watching it again.
Now everybody's like, what's that?
What is it?
But here's a reality. One of the longest syndicated television shows went off the air with this Black Lives Movement called The Cops.
Yeah.
Now, here's what we're talking about: systemic racism and propaganda that causes programming. Cops is I think it had a 20-something odd year run. And this television show, basically, for the most part, 90% of the criminals that are running around the United States that are being arrested are Black. Black.
Right.
Being chased by predominantly white cops.
True.
Through urban America.
Yes.
There's almost never a cop show that shows a mass school shooting that's done by a white kid. Listen, I'm not fanning the flames of racism here. I'm addressing the real systemic issue.
Yeah, we're just looking at the social environment landscape.
Right. If you don't look at it realistically, not through the eyes of your perspective or your perception, here's just a reality. This is the longest syndicated running television program in the last 2 decades.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know that this psychologically impacts our social norms and put in the mind of people consistently that Black people, or Black men especially, for the most part, are criminal.
You know what's interesting, Bishop? Remember what the Cops is actually what's not the predecessor, but it followed up. The predecessor of Cops was actually, remember we were younger, America's Most Wanted? And America's Most Wanted, and I hope I'm wrong, but mostly white criminals. And that, because is major. So now is replaced by Cops. I'm not trying to fan the flames either. I'm just trying to look at the kind of the way the media is playing. And our conversation is really beginning to be kind of like a critique on American media, of today's media, maybe more so than just the social environment that we're in. But consider that.
You can't ignore what we are taught, whether it starts in the school system, where we don't want to acknowledge slavery as an evil entity. If you make slavery pretty, or if you make excuses for slavery, then of course you're part of the problem and not part of the solution, right? This whole evolution for freedom for Black people in this country, to move from slavery to Jim Crow, this has been an evolution, a 400-year evolution, a 400-year journey, where you still have people right now, maybe in their 50s, 60s, or 70s. And I have my mother and my grandparents who can tell you. So this is one generation away from not being able to go to the front door of a restaurant. For a lot of people, this reality is not 500 years old.
Yeah, I
It's,
was
it's,
actually.
it's, it's not even one generation.
Yeah, I was actually. I was going to mention that I have a patient because I'm a visiting nurse. I visit patient different parts of Brooklyn, and there's a black gentleman who's maybe in his late 60s. I take care of him, and he and I were talking about it, and I said, man, I can't believe you were privy to the civil rights movement. This stuff. How come it has not waned? How come it's still here?
Right.
You've seen, and he was I believe he was a serviceman in Vietnam. So he was like Lemuel. When I was in Vietnam, we got treated so much better in Vietnam as blacks than in our own country. And he said, when I came home, people looked at me side eyes and called me the N word. When I was in Vietnam, I was a Joe. I was a GI. I was seen as an American soldier and not as a color. And in America, I'm mistreated, and if I can remember, he said he was even spit on because of that the situation that was happening about Vietnam at that time. And
And,
so you're right.
and we can honestly say, again, we can honestly say there's been great progression since then in the last 50 or 60 years.
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, black people have impacted every part of present day culture, whether it's entertainment, education. We are recognized in every aspect of culture. The thing you probably can never change is the heart of a person. Men's hearts have to change. So again, if I can't change your heart, then we do have to change laws. This
Mm.
last thing that's being uh, propagated and really pushed through the propaganda machine is blue on black crime. It's just like I said with coronavirus. Is as black people being killed by police officers, unknown black people being killed by police officers in this country? Yes. Do I know all the statistics on it? No. That's probably black people being killed by police officers that you will never hear about. As black people, the only people being killed by rogue, and let me say this because I'm not anti-police. Oftentimes, because police officers are human too. So officers can go rogue. Officers can do the bad. That's why other police officers have to be able to stand up and call other police officers out.
Yeah.
It's amazing that people want the religious community. Let me speak in my area as a pastor. That when other pastors stand up and do things that are unethical, other pastors should call them on the carpet.
Correct.
Right? Whether it's whatever it is, it is the biggest thing that's often connected in the Christian or religious community. Let's just be honest with it. It crosses ethnic lines, it crosses denominational lines.
Mm-hmm.
It's child molestation.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And folk get upset because they believe that in the Christian community, we're often quiet on it. We're often too quiet on it, which allows it to continue to perpetuate. I'm honest about that. We have this so-called line where we won't address those issues realistically. Where we in one denomination, they just pass the priest off from one district to the next district. It perpetuates the problem. It does not eliminate the problem. And we're doing it also in the police department and in our law enforcement, where good cops don't want to say anything, they don't want to cross the blue line, which helps perpetuate a problem, right? Because oftentimes by the time you catch one of these road cops, they have a history of abuse, abusing citizens. And so it's not a one-time thing. They become emboldened because they were never checked on it. Nobody never stopped them. Let me take this Jacob Blake situation from my perspective. From what I've read and from all accounts, he wasn't supposed to be there, right? His own fiance or girlfriend called the police officers on him. He did not obey when they told him lay down or sit down and all those things. And so people believe that makes for justification. I'm sorry. That still doesn't justify a police officer grabbing a man by the back of his shirt and shooting him 7 times point blank range in his back. No, why doesn't it justify it? Because it goes against all of his police training, first of all. All of this, there's nothing in his police training that will allow that. It's like having a car accident and you hit a person from the back. According to the law, you're automatically wrong because you're supposed to create a cushion between you and the vehicle in front of you for emergency stops. Once you hit that vehicle in the back, you're automatically wrong. You shoot a fleeing suspect in the back, I don't care what color he or she is. What's their gender? What's their sexual orientation? What's that? All that's irrelevant. You should not shoot an assailant. You should not shoot a criminal in the back.
Yeah.
Period. This is the thing we have to address. So if the police training has taught him not to do that, even though it's a spur of the moment and adrenaline, you can say whatever you want to say, he's wrong at that moment. If you put a knee in a gentleman's neck, if you're not trained to put his knee in his neck, or if there's things in place that says these are illegal holds, choking, knee to the neck, asphyxiation, you automatically are wrong. Regardless of this person's color, you're wrong. The reason Black Lives Matter or people making more noise about it, because this typically seems to happen more, or at least ends up on the news more, when it's done to Black people. So you get these images of Black people being shot and killed on the news over and over and over again on social media. Psychologically, that does something to you. It makes you believe, man, we're at war. There's a war going on. They're killing us. Then you hear it. Then somebody else comes out and they're killing us. They're killing. And it's hard to deny when every time you turn on the news, you see a Black man or a Black woman being killed, unarmed, fleeing, running, already handcuffed. Come on, that doesn't look
Do you
good.
think, Bishop, do you think that if the news, the mainstream media would show, if there are videos of it, would show white Americans being unjustly, I think there was a gentleman that actually was shot, and it was a white American. He was coming out of his apartment. Somebody had called the police on he and his girlfriend. They were enjoying their time together. They were just laughing and joking. I think they were watching some type of movie, and their neighbor did not appreciate the noise that was coming up at around 10 o'clock in the evening, and they called the cops on them, and the cop came in without identifying themselves, and he came out, and he had his whole. He also had a right to. He had a right to a weapon, and the police officer did not identify himself. And when he finally realized what it was, the man was going to lay down his gun, but the officer just killed him. But the question I have is, do you think if the mainstream media would show more cases of police officers wrongfully and unjustly killing or injuring white Americans, do you feel like the call for reform for police systems would take on a new heartbeat?
Because then you see yourself, white America would see themselves and be more empathetic, because the images of Black America has been that, especially Black men in America, has been demonized and criminalized. So in the minds of the subconscious of most of white America, they must have done something wrong. No, that doesn't just happen for nothing. They must have done something wrong.
Yeah, his name is Ryan Whittaker.
Right, so there's no empathy. But when it's a white person, because there's a certain level of empathy or self-righteousness or justice, what did he do? Why would you do that? If
Right.
not, he must have done something wrong. Then we start saying, well, he had a right to be in his home. He had a right to have his gun. We can say the same thing about Bolton, Bolton June, the young man who was
Yes.
killed in
Yes.
Texas in his
Hmm.
home, right? He gets killed in his home. He's unarmed, and the first thing we begin to do is, what was he? What did he do?
That's
It,
that's
you
incredible
have to
to me how
find out.
people want
This
to
is a,
demonize somebody who died, who
but
was
we
killed.
already, Pastor, we're already demonized when it comes to Black America. For the
Mm.
most part, we have to prove that we're innocent. We're assumed guilty, then we have to prove that we're innocent. For our white counterparts, they are oftentimes innocent until proven guilty. Here's what also fans the fuel, the flames, like we talked about the media, and their irresponsible, sometimes biased reporting, because they're reporting for likes, they're reporting for rates, and they often report that way because my white brothers and sisters are the majority in the country, right? So oftentimes, when you do see a mass school shooting, things of this nature, um, it's not even reported the same way. The words are not used. Gangsters or thugs or criminals. It's always still this confused young man who had a
Yeah,
mental issue.
the descriptors are different.
It's
The
real different.
descriptors are different when the color changes, it seems.
And again, when you hear the heartbeat of Black America, who says, "You mean to tell me over the last 10 years or more, Sandy Hook killing, Columbine, you name it, the young man who went and shot up the movie theater at the Batman, all of these kids, these young men were taken alive. They were there with assault rifles, this, that, and the other." They said, well, they obeyed the command, or they obeyed when the officer got there. Oftentimes they were given a chance to obey. When Tamir Rice was shot, and Tamir Rice was 11 or 12 years old,
12
the
years
officer
old.
pulled up and shot this kid in less than 2 to 3 seconds. He
Yeah.
never had a chance to say, this is a toy gun and I'm a 12-year-old kid. Because in the officer's mind, they said themselves, there's a certain level of fear. They were fearful for their life. Why are you more fearful for your life with a 12-year-old kid in the playground with a toy gun than you are of a white young
The
man
Ryan Rittenhouse. What's it,
who
the
just shot and killed 22 kids?
mm-hmm.
See, because you're not programmed to fear him. You've been programmed to fear me. You're programmed to fear a tall. He was a big, tall black guy like a Mike Brown. You're programmed to fear he was a black guy with a hood on his head like a Trayvon Martin. Right?
I think we want to really establish tonight, for those that are listening to us, that we are not trying to fan flames of division, of racial separation between the white Americans and Black Americans and the rest of us. We are, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Bishop, but we are expressing what we see and what is currently being deemed as a constant in the Black community. And I think there's a lot of people who reject this kind of conversation. There are some who are actually Black who reject this kind of conversation, but there is a group of people that reject this conversation and say, if they just comply, if they would just do this and they would just do A, B, and C, and deem these kinds of conversations and myself allowing us for these conversations to be a divisive form divisive form of media or conversation, and we're siding with one side over the other. And I think we have to, at least for me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Bishop, but we are not trying to incite a divisive or divisive means. This is a common feeling, a common thought. This is a narrative that we see in the Black community. And I think for us, and it bothers me, Bishop, it bothers me as a pastor to see brethren, I think I'll bring it back to the church, to see brethren not see the injustice in this. And I fear, and I hate to say this, but I fear it is because of color. that they cannot see somebody else broken, and somebody else seeing that, hey, it seems like the scales of injustice is leaning against me, and they can't seem to champion it. For nothing, they champion cancer. They would allow shoe changes for cancer. They would allow light the night on autism. They would light the, for leukemia and all these other conversations. They would allow it. And but yet when Black Americans say that this is happening to us, it's like, hey, no, don't talk about that. What are you talking about? You guys are millionaires. You have people that are on the boards of countries, on, excuse me, the boards of businesses and corporations. What are you talking about racism? What are you talking about oppression? What are you talking about struggle and injustice? You guys are already up here. If there's any struggle, it's on your part. It's you guys fighting against each other. And that seems to me, it hurts me as a believer in Jesus, that we are called to bear each other's burden, and to kind of suffer with those that are suffering, and to mourn with those that mourn, and weep with those that weep. It hurts me that believers, fellow ministers even, paint it as a broad stroke and try to hide it, and try to say that this is not our issue. It's being overplayed. And really, we should stand there, and I'm talking about as a person that is not Black, to stand there and say, hey, if you're hurt, we're going to work together, and let's walk this thing together, because you're my brother and you're my sister, and I don't want to see you burdened and broken. And we can see people that maybe in the eyes of people, maybe like Jacob Blake, I believe that's his name, right?
Yeah.
That he has a criminal record. But I'm here having this conversation with you. You're a bishop of a church. You're a man of God, and you feel the same way. And so this is not for criminality's sake. This is for color's sake and the justice sake. And we need to really rise up together. And the more we understand the teaching of Christ, the less divisive this thing would be.
Of course,
I'm sorry, I'm preaching now, but
no, but of course, this system has successfully divided us to conquer us and to make merchandise of us. We have more in common than we have different, but the things that they're mastering division on are the things that we have in difference. We have a different of experience in America.
Thank you, Sister Patricia.
We have a difference of experience in America, and without having an opportunity, you'll never find compromise without conversation, without communication. You'll never get a chance to understand me, and I'll never get a chance to understand you unless we can sit at the table and dialogue respectfully. There's no Black person in America who could be upset at any ethnicity, other ethnicity, whether it be white, Latino, or anyone else who does not understand your exact experience as a Black person in America. And because they do not completely understand, sometimes that comes out in different forms, in different ways. It's, like somebody who may say, you didn't just pull yourself up by your bootstrap, and not understanding you had boots given to you. We don't even have boots. I can't pull up the strap. When you start talking about transgenerational wealth, and somebody who's the first person to get out of the projects after spending 4 generations in poverty, because they are the descendants of slaves who are descendants of sharecroppers who ended up coming to the city to try and get a job and end up in the projects. And then finally somebody gets out of the projects, and then you turn around and say, oh, look, she made it. It took 4 generations. Over those last same 4 generations for your family, your people may have came on because we all came as immigrants, but they may have had a better start simply because the system was designed to give them a better start. So maybe what took us 4 generations, maybe it only took you 1 generation. So over the last 3 generations, because the system was designed and created for you for a certain group, you've experienced 3 generations of wealth. So once again, like I said, it's like coming to a Monopoly game that you've already been playing for 4 hours and give me a piece and say, here, you can play, get it like the rest of us. I'm not going to be able to get it like the rest of you, because the rest of you were able to get it for 400 years before we could even get on the board. So that's the beginning of having empathy and understanding the impact of systemic racism. Again, have we made great strides? Yes. Was anything given to Black people in America? Let's have a real conversation. At this point, there's nothing given, everything earned. I'm talking about the ones that's going to be successful. It's nothing given, it's going to be everything earned. It's going to be going in an education, coming out of whatever situation that they're in, and finding a way out. I can give another example. Like right now, let me tell you the power of systemic racism, even now. So the white community now in America is experiencing this drug addiction. I'm trying to remember the name of the drug. In my growing up, crack cocaine completely devastated the Black community in the 80s and the 90s. Mm-hmm. A generation before that, in the 60s and the 70s, it was heroin. We legally looked at crack.
Oh yeah,
heroin.
Go ahead.
In our country, we legally criminalize and judge our criminals different. Crack cocaine sentences were harsher than powder cocaine. Same drug, which put more Black people in jail for longer sentences than our white counterparts who typically use powder cocaine or crack cocaine. Now you have I'm trying to remember the name of this drug that's right now that's really impacting even suburban white America. Laws have been changed now.
Wouldn't it be heroin, Bishop? Is that what you're looking for?
It's not, but they don't call it heroin. I'm forgetting the name of it. It's really escaping my mind right now.
Okay.
But it's devastating white communities right now. This went all the way up to the Senate, to the Congress, where it's no longer criminal to use these drugs. You're now, if you're arrested for it, you get help. You get to go into all these programs.
Well, they have needle stations. They have places to drop the needles in.
Listen, this stuff devastated our community, locked our fathers and our mothers up, sent child protections into homes, stripped families. Are you listening to me? When drugs impacted our community, you were a criminal because you had an addiction. That's opioids. That's it. Opioids are now devastating our white brothers and sisters, devastating suburban, rural communities. Laws have now been changed to say we should not criminalize a person for an addiction. It's not a criminal act to inflict pain on yourself for using drugs. When did we get that revelation? Because we locked up every person who was smoking crack cocaine and marijuana and heroin for the last 50 to 60 years.
There was no needle deposits in the Black community. No needle exchanges
for heroin addicts. There was no reform programs. You went to jail.
You went to jail. However old you were.
They called a user's amount. And we caught you with it 2 and 3 times. 3 times strikes you out. Triple bail in some cities, in some states, where it would have been 2 or 3 years. Now it's 10, 15, and 25 years for being a user. And we talk down to these people. You're an addict. You're ashamed. But now that it's in our white brothers and sister community, they have empathy. They're empathetic now because it's their son, it's their daughter. And you don't want to see your daughter as a criminal.
Yeah.
It's hard for you to see her as an addict. Imagine what we had to see. We saw the same thing, but when it wasn't impacting their community, they were not empathetic. We're empathetic because we've lived through it and we were locked up for it. We were incarcerated for it. It devastated our community. It took hard-working Black people who were in Detroit, Michigan, and who came out of Jim Crow and civil rights and became homeowners and business owners and family men and women. Drugs get introduced to our community. Addictions happen. There's no rehabilitation. There's incarceration. Now, laws are put in place for rehabilitation. This is what we're talking about when you start talking about a systemic racial bias, racism. That is systemic racism. I'm not saying they should not have rehabilitation for those who are addicted to opioids.
Yeah, we're not saying
I'm,
it's wrong.
I'm not
We're
saying
just
it's
saying
wrong.
it wasn't available
I'm saying we didn't
when
use the same judgment,
right.
right? Because cops was running those syndications, chasing down what we call crackheads and crack dealers. Nobody's chasing down the opioid heads and the opioid dealers because we're not sharing that with the same propaganda. Because the issue becomes, brother pastor, when that white senator looks at that white man on drugs, he sees
That's
himself or
his.
he sees his
Yes.
sons. As he's empathetic, he can see himself.
Right.
The reason, and I could be wrong statistically, but the reason why, if unarmed white people are being killed by white police officers at a high alarming rate, the reason why it's not on television, the reason why it's not on media, because of what you said, there would be such a public outcry. We can't have that. I cannot turn on the news and see a police officer consistently kill somebody who looks like my John, who looks like my Tom, who looks like my Laura. I can't have that. That would cause public outcry because you become empathetic if that's in your community. And if it is happening in your community, then those in power in media understand that they can't show that on no cycle, no 24/7 cycle. We can't show that. Just like you don't see images of those who are addicted to opioids, like we saw images of crackheads growing up in every movie, in every song, in every television program. It was before us 24/7. For the entertainment of the world, we became the world's entertainment at our expense.
Let me ask this, Bishop, and we're coming to the ending of our program here, and thank you again for not only joining me but really kind of sharing your heart tonight and being a voice of reason. I hope somebody is listening because there's really, I think the people are finding themselves into corners and trying to put themselves into lines instead of listening.
And we don't need to be. We don't need to be divided. We don't need to be separate. We don't need to be cornered. We need to come to the table. There are always, especially as men and women of God and Christian or spiritual leaders, we need to always be willing to sit at the table, especially with those who disagree with us.
Yes.
If the only people you're willing to sit at the table with is those who agree with you, then I think you're inferior or you're intimidated. That maybe you may find out that you are wrong or need to learn something new. We have to be willing to reach across the aisle. Democrats have to sit at the table with Republicans. Republicans have to sit at the table with Democrats. Gays or homosexuals have to sit at the table with heterosexuals. You can't get up and say, let's wipe out all the heterosexuals. And I know any Christian, you should not even be saying, let's burn down every city that have homosexuals in it. That's not the heart of God. Christ said he didn't come to condemn them. He came to seek and save them which who are lost. If we don't have a ministry of redemption and reconciliation, we don't have the heart of Christ.
What do you say to people that say that this conversation, what you've been speaking the past couple of minutes, is race baiting?
It's because they're uniquely tucked away in their own little reality, their own perspective, and they're not willing to consider, could I be wrong? I must approach every conversation that I'm willing to have compromise on. I could be wrong. I teach married couples all the time. Husband, you could feel you're right, but you need to approach the conversation with, babe, I could be wrong, but this is how I feel. That disarms everybody in the room. You could be wrong. Pastor, I could be wrong, but this is my experience. This is my reality. You can't tell a person about their experience. You can't tell me about my reality. You can disagree, but it's still my experience. And until you had my experience, all you have is an opinion. I have an experience.
That's exactly what I was trying to express earlier, is to even take the opinion that you have and understand that somebody's telling you, like, I'm in pain. Nurses are taught, that pain
Right.
is subjective, right? Or is it
Bingo.
that it's the person who who rates their pain? I can't be
Right.
a person looking at a patient and going, "You look like you have a 2 level pain," and they're telling you, "No, it's 5, it's 6 or 7. I'm ready to go to the hospital." Because some people it just doesn't show on their face, and for us to
Oh,
kind of say, "No,
that doctor, that nurse lacks empathy. If they stand, oh, you could take a little bit more. But
that's right. You can take a little bit
I
more,
can't
right?
take
You
no
can
more.
take, and a lot of people are trying to tell our black brethren to hey, it's not as bad. Racism is not. It's not even. I read some people, bishops, pastors. It's not even here. You're trying to cause a divide because there's no such thing anymore. I
I
run
heard the
around with
words about.
black
I heard
brethren.
the
I run
words
around. You go
of a
ahead.
young. I heard the words of an older white woman. I think she's a professor. I don't know her by name. I've seen this over and over again. And she says, if you don't believe that black people have it harder in this country, we have it better than we've had. But she said, if you don't believe that the black experience is hard in this country, harder than the white experience, harder than an Asian experience, said, who wants to trade places with anyone in Black America? She said, go trade places with someone in Black America.
And live their
And no,
life, right? Not
no one in
not
the
not
no one
not
in
be
the
a
room volunteered.
not be a LeBron James, not be a Jay
Now,
Z,
yeah,
but just a regular dude, just a regular
LeBron James
black
is a
man in
gentleman,
America walking down the streets of New York.
right?
Let's take you go and exchange your place with him and
Right,
experience that.
right. I mean, let's trade places, trade places. I mean, I can have a real talk with you and with anybody because my heart is really in the right place. But even we deal with the situation and the murder and the killings that's happening. Chicago has become this poster board for horrible places to live.
Yeah.
But we rewrite history. We romanticize Chicago when the bloodshed was being done by one Scarface Al Capone.
Right.
And
The
the
mafia
mob,
bosses.
and they were doing drive-bys and they were killing priests and young babies and women. And anybody can get it. And cars being blown up, and judges are being paid off or dying, and police officers were being brought off. And what you have in Chicago is different bodies, but same spirits.
Mm. Mm.
What the gangs of Chicago's are just a different color. But Chicago has been gangland, been mafia, and we romanticized it. And because we romanticized it, we repeating it. It's just in a different culture. Demons don't care what's your skin color. Now that's for the church, and we have to see it for what it is. If you criminalize or demonize the ethnicity, then you'll never get to the root of it, which is the spirit. Those people in Chicago, these people in Chicago are still souls.
Mm. Yeah.
See, well, they were men of respect, and these boys just horrible. Okay, so what's the difference between a Tommy gun and an AK-47? Oh, we committed drive-bys in suits. we killed our people in style. Y'all wear bandanas. So it's the
Well,
same.
I had so many. I had we had some conversations that were ready to roll, and I see that this really. I know we had this conversation in July. Actually, the fact of the matter is, unpacking started with Ahmad Arbery,
Yeah,
and really kind of like took the direction that is taking now. This show is taken because of that conversation that we had early on in March and May and April, May, and it is my friend Tyree. You met him. He
yeah,
said he was talking about the shelf life. The shelf life. This conversation is hot right now because it's right in front of us. But the
right.
shelf life, people will
Eventually,
stop talking about it once the shelf life expires. But unfortunate for the black community, one story may have expired but another has replaced it on the
So
shelf.
I agree with Brother Tyreek with this, but and it goes back to our original point. What gives shelf life? When does it stop being a hot topic? Because it's always happened in the black community.
Right. No, we're
The
talking about the
media,
media.
the media decides what we can protest and what we can't protest, when it's hot, when it's not hot. Black people have always been in the situation we've been in. I can tell you, growing up, uh, I've seen unarmed black men killed by hot and angry police officers who could just do it in the New Orleans Police Department, and it was it was black officers who were doing it. I remember when one Corden Harton was killed in New Orleans. He didn't have a gun in his hand. His brother had committed some crimes against the police. They couldn't get him. They couldn't get the brother, so they got him. Uh, uh, and I remember a mother and her son being willing to testify that it was an unjust shooting. And then the police began to terrorize that mother and her son to the point where they had to leave our community just to be protected. And that is a city where predominantly is black, and our police department was predominantly black. So it's whatever, and most people never heard of it because the news didn't spin it. The media didn't play it. So it didn't get lift. These kind of things are happening in our communities, Latino communities, and I do believe in our Caucasian community. I do believe that white people are experiencing. I'll say this, especially if anybody say we're race baiting. If we're race baiting, you're not listening to the conversation, because I said coming in that the media is successfully using our difference and our experience against us for their own gain. I cannot say that there are not unarmed white people being killed in America, because I don't live in the white community to know that experience. I can only go by what the media is playing.
Yeah.
If the media does not show it, but the media is willing to show one group all the time, then we have to be honest and say, well, there's an agenda. And then we have to also ask ourselves, why are we allowing it? My opinion is because black people create great entertainment for America. Always has.
Wow.
And it's easier for the majority to watch black people run through the streets from police officers. Black people die at the hands of other black people. Black people make music about degenerating other black people. Black people make movies about assassinating and killing other black people. Than it is for the majority in this country to see those same images, hear music about those same. They're not gonna tolerate it. They're not.
Bishop, I could talk about this stuff with you, and we do actually. People don't realize that when you and I call each other, I know you're busy, so you and I are busy, but when we do speak to each other, we do speak about these things. These are the things in our heart, and we pray about it and we talk about it because it is a concern, a true concern.
Yes, sir.
We're not putting this on for the conversation for this program alone, but it is a concern because it is a concern for members of our community. And I think I have to say the same thing I said earlier on this year, that it should be a concern to all of us. That this may be happening to the black community, but this is an issue for all Americans. This is our own issue, and the quicker we all understand that this is all our issue, the better it's going to be for all of us, and especially for those that are actually struggling. And if we come together and understand that this may be happening again to the section or the subgroup within our community, but it is all our issue, then those that are actually in the offices where they are, the government and the officials and all those people that can do something about it, will actually do something about it, because it's no longer just a faction of our community, but it's a whole, it's understood to be an issue in our country, in our society. And I think, ultimately, I wanted to have a conversation about the social construct, the social environment, the social atmosphere, but this issue may have a shelf life to folks that are not black, but this never goes out the shelf. It has
Yeah, out of
they.
sight, out of mind. Once it comes
I
out the
think
media, it's
I
back
think,
on the
and
shelf.
you could probably agree with me that you wanted to have a shelf life. If it was
Right,
up to you, you wanted to expire.
right.
Unfortunately, every time the shelf is almost a fixture, if not already is a fixture in our society, and the more we come together, even as brethren, as church people, as Christ, because ultimately, I think that the church has got to be about each other, about the kingdom of God, and about the sufficiency of each other. Like the early church, they sold
Right,
everything that they needed to sell to
right.
give to the leaders at that time to move the community along as a group. And I think we
If
need
we
to do that
follow,
the same.
if we follow the example of the early church, they didn't let the division divide them; they conquered it. Jews came together with Samaritans. Samaritans came together with Gentiles. Christ became the unifier in the civil
Amen.
rights
I
movement.
love it.
The civil
Christ became
rights
the
movement,
unifier.
Christians led the civil rights movement, not just Black Christians. And we know that if Black Americans are going to move forward, we're going to have allies from every community: white community, Latino community, the Filipino community. We're going to have allies, because this is a human problem. When it rains on one man's house, it should rain on all of our houses. And Christianity must once again lead from the forefront. We must be the conscience of America. I think the solution, an immediate solution, is outside of the church. Is not this. I'm not pro defunding police. I do believe there must be some different levels of training, and there must be a balance of ethnicities in these different communities. That's just the beginning to solve that problem. It's deeper when you start talking about solving systemic racism. There's laws that has to be changed, and
I
laws have been
actually,
changed, and laws have to be changed.
yeah,
But
I actually,
the church is the Christ is the great unifier. We have to come together.
I actually will have a police officer in my show in a couple of weeks from now. They're displaced because of the hurricanes that just happened over in the Gulf, and I think you guys are gonna see another
Well,
hurricane.
we'll get a little rain in Jackson, Mississippi, but I don't think we're going to get the brunt of the Gulf Coast to get a lot of it. But we'll
Yeah,
get it higher up. So
2020 has just been. I
2020 has been
don't know. I
crazy.
mean it. Oh,
Hopefully, we learn our lessons from 2020 and we go on and prosper and be
I
blessed.
don't even want to say what I want to say. I don't even want to say because I don't want it to happen. But thankfully, there's not been wars. Let's just say, thankfully,
That's been a good thing. Under
war
this
has not
administration, we
broken
haven't
out
seen
in the
any war.
globe.
Yeah, we haven't had any war, at least America, under this administration, nothing major. In fact, we're bringing more soldiers home than in a long time. So I thank God for that.
Well, that's a positive in 2020 that we are
That's
actually
a
not at
positive.
war, and more of our
Yeah,
men and women are coming back. Men and
they're
women in
coming home.
service are coming back home. So that's a good thing. And
That's a
my
great
friend,
thing.
I love you, and I
I love
cherish
you
our
too, Pastor.
friendship. I
Yes, sir.
I am I am very proud that I know you, not because I am good looking by association. Praise God. Brilliant by association.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like I told you over the phone, every time I hear you, you always sound like you just preached the sermon of the year.
Oh, you should have been in church.
one,
You should have been in church.
one of these days, we get a chance to go to Epicenter over there in Jackson and
Amen.
shout the paper down, as they would say,
Yes, sir.
shout the walls down for
Shout
the
the walls
glory of
down.
God. I thank
Amen.
you for spending this time with me. I thank you for sharing your heart. I thank you for sharing your community's thoughts and just the things that are being perpetrated towards that community and helping us to understand the burden of Black Americans and those that are affected by injustice in this light. And though we really were not geared to talk about this particular area in 2020, and I wanted to talk about the pandemic and all the craziness that's happening, but unfortunately it is still in front of our face. It is still happening, and justice still needs to be done. Breonna Taylor's killers still need to be brought to justice. People still need to
Amen.
understand that there are people that are that are undeserving of death, that are innocent, that have died under um, just inappropriate and unjust circumstances that unfortunately befall the black community more than any other community, and we need to
Right.
stand together. And you know, some brethren kind of like dislike the idea of the NFL or the NBA putting on Black Lives Matter on the marquee and on their courts and on the field. And I mean, I don't understand it. I don't understand how people cannot understand what's going on.
Right.
But
I think when it comes to sports have been the great unifier. One of the other great unifiers globally, internationally. Sports has been one thing that can bring everyone together. Um, I do, even with that, I do think that some people are doing what they feel is best for business, maybe not even really having a real purpose or connection to it, but financially they're just doing what needs to be done. But I do believe that there are individual players and people
that's right.
that are part of it that do feel passionate about it. And this is their way of expression. I can't judge every man's heart and every man's intent, but to say that there's people, everybody there is disingenuous, or that everybody there doesn't care, or because I'm a millionaire, I'm disconnected, I think that's disingenuous.
You know what I
Uh,
like, and I'm trying to close. I'm trying to close the broadcast, but I so enjoy my time with you here, and you and I are preachers, Pentecostal preachers
we
for
can
that
go all
matter.
day.
So
Free closes in the service.
I'm not even sure if this broadcast will ever end. But one of the things I really do, I've enjoyed watching the NFL this week is that the unity that is expressed by the black players kneeling or even standing, and the white players are kneeling, or some are standing and holding on to each other, locking arms, having hands on the shoulders. I like that. There's no sense of like angst. There's no sense of you're not for me or you're against me, but rather just we're just here making a visual statement and somewhat of a the visual statement of what we're trying to do is to bring justice to everybody and to bring these kind of injustices to light and to make America.
But I think they're showing us how we're supposed to do it, right? So you get one baseball player who says, I'm a Christian. I do believe Black Lives Matter, but I'm having a conviction problem with supporting BLM organization. I don't agree with it. He said, but I sat and I talked with my team and let them know, man, I'm for you. I'm willing to help in this area, but I can't go against my conviction here. And the team was willing to say, you stand, we'll kneel, and we can still be together as a team and make other things happen. I think that's a great example. We're not going to agree on everything, but just because we disagree don't mean we have to be enemies. That's just my mindset. My mindset is we don't have to agree on everything, but when we walk out this room, what are we doing together? Why are we a unified front? And you can't tell me you love me and you don't at least want to be able to stand with me in my moment of pain. You may not even understand all of my pain.
That's right.
But in my moment of pain, is there anything you can stand with me on?
There's some compassion.
Just
agreement.
A certain level of empathy, compassion, man. You're my friend, you're my brother. And if you tell me you're in pain and you're my brother, I'm not fussing at you. Oh, that shouldn't even hurt you.
That's right.
You ought to be over that. But
Dismissing people's pain is
Right.
never, I believe, never the Christian way, never Christ's way, because he came to bear our pain on the cross, not to dismiss them from where
That's right.
he sits. But anyway, Bishop, thank you so much. And for those of you that have been with us for the past hour and a half, we're just so grateful. I'm just so grateful that you joined us. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for those that are commenting. I hope that we brought to light some of your statements, some of your comments, and Bishop and I enjoyed our conversation, and I hope you also enjoy this conversation. If you have enjoyed this conversation, please like this page, LJA Ministries, so that and also make sure you follow it so that you can be notified when I come on live. It's going to be every Monday at 8:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so be here next week as I bring another guest to interview and unpack certain thoughts, topics, and ideas. I have doctors coming in. I have professors coming in. I have police officers coming in. I have entrepreneurs coming in. I got business people that are coming in. I got flippers, people that flip houses. So we're entering into not just the social aspects of what's happening in our world, but business-wise, and trying to enrich the community and trying to be a blessing to those that are following this page and those that are within the circles. So I want to thank again my beloved friend, Bishop Traylor, over at Jackson, Mississippi, over at Epicenter Church. Whoop, whoop. Praise God.
Jackson, Mississippi, come on and see us every Sunday at 11 a.m., Sunday at 7 p.m. Follow us at the Epicenter Church MS.com. Follow me at www.LionelJTraylorMinistries.com. You can Facebook friend me. I'm on Instagram. I don't tick and talk, but I do IG and I do on Facebook. So God bless you. I love you, Pastor. I enjoy talking with you, man, because I know our hearts are in the right place. I know your heart is in the right place. Love you.
Thank you, sir. And again, everybody, thank you again for joining me. Until next time, y'all, like this message, like this video, comment, share it. And until next time, God bless you and be well.